it was a really good reading month. Hello Bookworm family, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, I'm Danny. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button down below. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell because I'm posting lots of new content all the time. And if you're not already following me on Instagram, please be sure to do that. It is at _dancing_bookworm. Post on there full book reviews and bookish content. So it is time for April's wrap up. April came, it went, it shot out of here like lightning, and I almost didn't make it to the end of my TBR and Owls, but I did. I'm so proud of myself. I read 15 books this month. 15, you guys. I think that's the most that I've read in a month ever. Now, some of them are pretty short, middle grade, or like children's books, but still 15 books. It's a lot of books. So we're going to jump into the wrap up because this video is going to be a really long video no matter what I do. We're just going to jump right into the wrap up. I do want to warn you guys ahead of time, I do have a really sore throat. So if I sound weird or if I'm doing that a lot where I'm like taking a break between sentences, it is just because my throat is sore. So anyways, month of April, I read 15 books. I read 2 realistic fiction, 1 romance, 1 mystery, 6 sci-fi fantasy, 1 nonfiction or memoir, and 4 other. I read 5 children's books, 2 middle grade books, 6 YA books, and 2 adult books. I read 8 paperbacks, 3 hardcovers, 1 ebook, 3 audiobooks, no graphic novels, and no other. And I had 1 1-star book, 6 2-star books, 1 3-star book, 4 4-star books, and 3 5-star books. So overall, it was a pretty good month. I had more 2-star books than I would have been happy with normally. Prefer to have 3 or higher stars, but I did also read a lot of like children's books that just didn't interest me because I read them with my niece. We're going to start right away. We're going to jump into the first one. However, I did have a DNF this month, which was not counted in those statistics because I don't put my DNFs in my statistics. I know some people do, I just don't. But I did not finish the BFG by Roald Dahl. My niece and I had started reading this together. She lost interest about chapter 3 or 4. I know some people would say that that's not an official DNF, but anytime I've started a book and choose not to finish it, like even if I've only read a chapter, I count it as a DNF. The reason I didn't keep going with it, even though she didn't want to keep going with it, I could have kept going with it, but I chose not to because I've already read this book and it was only a 2-star book for me the first time I read it. I like Roald Dahl's books, I'm just not into this one, so. But if you guys don't know what this book is about, basically it's about a girl who is kidnapped in the middle of the night by a friendly giant who wants to protect her from the giants who choose to eat children because that's what they do. But yeah, just didn't want to finish reading it. I've already read it, so it just wasn't my thing to finish this month. So the first book that I officially read in the month of April was Sarah Plain and Tall by Patricia McLaughlin. This is about 2 kids, Caleb and Anna, whose mother has passed away, so their father places an ad in, it's like the prairie lands of the 1800s is where this takes place, but he places an ad looking for somebody to come be the mother of his children and his future wife. So Sarah comes all the way from the sea and this beautiful place to go live in the prairie lands to help raise these children. And she has 1 month there, and the children and the father must convince her that it is the place for her so that she chooses to stay. This was a 2-star book for me. I had read this before, I believe in like 4th grade, but I needed a classic for my TBR raffle, and this was like published in 1985, so classic-ish, but I did look it up and it's considered a classic by whatever classic standards there are. It just wasn't my cup of tea. I felt the logic wasn't really there, like even for the 1800s, like I know people married based on certain things like just needing to be married kind of thing, but it was strange. I didn't dig it. So yeah, I only gave I only gave those 2 stars. Not my thing. So the next book that I read was Peace, Locomotion by Jacqueline Woodson. This is the follow-up to her book Locomotion, which was about a young foster boy who wanted to connect with his sister who had been separated from him after their parents gave them up or passed away or all the things that happened to them. This one specifically is about, he's finally settling into his foster family, and he starts writing letters to his sister so that his sister's not missing out on too much of his life. However, his sister's very happy in the situation that she's in and doesn't really want to, like, be with Locomotion all the time, so he's having a hard time adjusting to that. Also, his foster brother has been sent home from war extremely wounded, and they're adjusting to his PTSD and how to take care of him, and it's somebody that Locomotion has never met before because he was away at war when Locomotion was taken in by their foster mother. This I also gave 2 out of 5 star. I thought the first book was better. I thought it had more of a plot line. I did like some of the stuff that this touched on. However, I didn't really get like a great setting, or like, I don't know, like it didn't give me like a good setting. It didn't give me a good like plot. It was just what it was. There was no character arc really for the main character. The character arc was more for the secondary characters. I don't know. It just didn't really do much for me. So it only was a 2-star for me. The next book that I read on audiobook, and it was The Help by Catherine Stockett. This is about a black maid in the 1960s who's living in Jackson, Mississippi, and she is working for white people when another white woman approaches her and asks her if she'd be interested in having like very candid interviews about what it's like to be a black maid in Jackson in that time period. So basically they get together and she's revealing all these stories about the people that she has worked for and the things that they've done and the things that have been good and the things that have been bad about them. But in order to get the book published, they have to get more maids to agree to do it, but people are too afraid because they're afraid they're going to not only lose their job, but lose their families and respect of the community. So it was a very, very good book. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I feel like I went into this book, so this was for my TBR raffle, I didn't say what Peace Locomotion was for. Peace Locomotion was for a short book, but The Help was for my TBR raffle. I did random number generator, and it popped up on my Goodreads TBR. Well, I did not want to read it. If you guys saw that video, I was like, oh my gosh, this is not going to be my cup of tea. I'm not going to like this. I ended up really enjoying it. I did only give it 4 out of 5 stars just because, like, as much as I did like it, I think I liked a lot of it because it was on audiobook. I don't think I would have liked to sit down and read it. I thought the audiobook was really, really well done, and it kind of made it for me. But the reason it's not quite a 5-star is just because I don't think I would have liked reading it as a book, like reading it in book form. I just really enjoyed the audiobook. But I thought overall it was really good. I cried so much during this book. There were so many parts where I was cracking up, but then so many parts where I was crying. So I thought it was very, very well written. I see why it's so well loved. Just really good book, really good book. The next book that I read was Refugee by Alan Gratz. This is about 3 children during different time periods. There's Joseph, or Joseph, I have not figured out how to say his name, but I was going with Joseph as I was reading it, who is a Jewish boy fleeing Germany during Nazi Germany times. There's Isabel, who is fleeing Cuba during the reign of Fidel Castro, and there is Mahmoud, who is fleeing Syria during I believe it was like 2016 or something like that. 2015, during like the Syrian bombings and stuff like that. So basically it's all 3 of their stories and how they intertwined eventually throughout time and how history repeats itself kind of vibes. I really enjoyed this book. This was the Text a Friend pick for my TBR raffle. I didn't think I was gonna like it because it was historical fiction. I don't normally love historical fiction. But I really went on an emotional roller coaster with this. I didn't cry. My best friend was like, you're gonna cry, you're gonna need tissues, I didn't cry, but like it was good. And like I definitely felt my heartstrings being tugged, but I didn't cry. She was gonna hate me for that, but I didn't. But I did think it was good. There was a couple parts that I was like, would that happen though? Like the beginning was just like everything was really easy for all of them. Like it eventually like got more realistic as you went along, but that was the reason it didn't get a 5-star for me, is it just didn't, like, there were so many parts where it was like, oh, and then everything was fine, and then everything was fine, and then everything was fine. I was like, was it though? was everything really fine? But yeah, overall I thought it was a really good book. Alan Gratz is my best friend's favorite author, so I think I'll probably end up reading more by him. But for right now, I thought it was a good start to reading Alan Gratz books. If you guys are interested in that, that is her favorite author of all time, and if you like historical fiction, I think you'd really enjoy that one. The next one I read was on ebook, and it was Will My Cat Eat My Eyeballs by Caitlin Doughty. This was my very first 1-star book of the year. This book is about basically questions that kids have asked her. She's a mortician, and kids have asked her questions and how she responded more adultly to those questions. But I didn't like this book. I just feel like I wasn't ready for this book. Being that my dad just passed away in November, it was very graphic, talking about what happens to the body post-death and stuff like that. I was just not ready for it. It put me in a really dark place reading it, and it was really, I don't know, intense and I thought it was going to be something like cutesy, like kids asking questions like, oh, like, will my cat eat my eyeballs? And being like, yeah, no, that doesn't happen unless like blah 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 happens. But this was like answered way more adult than I expected it to be, and it just wasn't anything like that. It was so logical that it wasn't fun, and she tried to be funny, but I'm just not in a place, with my dad literally have just passing away a few months ago, I'm not in a place where I could like look at it and be like, oh, how funny, you know, people die, haha. Like, it just wasn't for me. So that was only a 1-star book for me, and the very first 1-star that I've given all year long. So I know other people like that book, I just wasn't in the mindset for it. But that's kind of what the ratings turned out based off of, was my mindset and how I could handle the book. So the next one that I read was Chasing Vermeer by Blue Belliette. This is about 2 kids, Petra and Calder, who have a super sweet teacher and they like her a lot. They've also made friends with this elderly lady. However, both of those people are in danger when they are being accused of a missing Vermeer painting being stolen, and people think it was them. So Petra and Calder must kind of go off and figure out who done it before these people that they care about are put under more suspicion. This was a 2 out of 5 star book for me. I didn't super love it. I did use it for my TBR prompt for mystery, and it was middle grade, just because I wanted a short, simple mystery. I just didn't, there was parts where it was like, ooh, is this going to be a fantasy actually? And then it was like, no. Like, oh, okay, well then why even bring it up? And then there was also things where I was like, that wouldn't happen. It was a very, very low logic book for me. Like, it just did not do much for me. And I just wasn't a fan of the overall plot, and I didn't really feel like there was great characterizations in it either. Just not my cup of tea. But I do see how kids in this age group would enjoy it, so that's why it got a 2 instead of a 1-star for me. So the next book that I read was The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. If you guys have lived under a rock for several years and do not know what The Hunger Game is about, this is about a girl named Katniss Everdeen who volunteers as tribute to take place of her sister, who was chosen to go fight in a battle to the death amongst other kids, as kind of a reality television show for a dystopian city that believes that they need to send children into battle to show them what punishment is for once overruling them. This book was one of my favorites. I think probably my favorite book for a long time once I started college. I just really connected with the character. I love Katniss. I love how protective she is of her little sister. This is still a 5-star book for me because it just has a lot of, like, I don't know, nostalgia to it. Like, reading it, it reminds me of my first year of college at, like, when I went to, like, my state school college. I just really, really enjoyed this book and reading it again. And I listened to it on audiobook too, and I think that that helped too. It was just a different experience that I got with it. And this was for the TBR prompt pet pick. So my pet did good. My dog did good. The next book that I read was Dear Sister by Allison McGee. I read this with my niece. This is like a starter graphic novel almost, like most of it's done in pictures and diary format. I really, really enjoyed reading this with her because I thought she loved this book. Like, she thought it was so funny. She loved the illustrations. She wants to be an illustrator when she grows up. She's 6, so I mean, it's probably going to change like 7 more times. That's what she wants to be right now when she grows up. And I thought that the book had a lot of great humor in it. This was a 4 out of 5 star for me. But basically it is about a brother who is writing letters to his little sister who annoys him endlessly from the day she's born to the day that he leaves for college. And slowly you can see their love for each other growing, but I mean, he really hates his sister at first. Like, that's what he thinks of his sister at first. So it was really funny. I loved reading it with her. She laughed out loud at it a couple times, and I think that's the first time that I've really seen her enjoy a book, rather than just reading it because she has to read it for something. Like, she actually enjoyed it, and I think it was really fun. Gave me a little extra oomph for it, but it was a 4 star for me. I did feel like there could have been a little bit more content reading wise. Like, yes, it was kind of playing off the graphic novel format, but I just felt like that there wasn't like a huge plot line. But overall, I think that a lot of the illustrations and a lot of the funny little quips in it made up for that. So the next book that I read was The Running Dream. This was by Wendelin Van Draenen. I talked about this a lot in one of my vlogs, but basically this is about a girl who is in a tragic bus accident and she loses her leg. She is a track star and she is working on getting a track scholarship and setting records at her high school. However, after she loses her leg, she thinks that that dream is gone, so she befriends somebody who has cerebral palsy to help her get back on track with her schoolwork, and that person kind of inspires her to push herself beyond what she thought she was capable of. This is a very, like, simple book. Like, your basic, like, probably would have been a Disney Channel movie if it wasn't a book kind of thing. Like, it just wasn't. This is only 2 star for me because a lot of the things, too, was, like, it didn't take her long to, like, overcome things. Like, it was so, I feel like the book was rushing to get through the plot line that it, like, took her, like, you know, like, 5 days to get over the fact that she didn't have a leg. Like, whatever. I guess I don't have a leg. Like, there was just things that was like, wow, that was a quick change. That was a quick turnaround. The characters just were, like, flat a little, I guess. Like, I really enjoyed one character for a long time and then she just fell flat. The best part of this book was the dog, and it made me want to go read next to my dog because I liked the dog, but I just didn't really enjoy the book overall. The next book that I read was one of my favorite books. It is Love and Gelato. This is by Jenna Evans Welch. This was a 5-star read for me. I absolutely loved it. This is about a girl whose mother passes away of cancer and she is sent to go live with her estranged father in Italy. Once she gets there, she realizes that there's a lot of secrets behind the past that her mother and father had together, and she's discovering it all through a journal that she is then trying to go relive out her mother's adventures in this journal with a boy that she met next door. This book, I hate romance. I hate, more than anything, heterosexual teen romance. I think that those books are awful, except this one. This book was amazing. It was funny. It was warm-hearted. It just made me happy. Like, I snuggled up under my covers. I read it in the bath. It was just a relaxing, like, spa day book. Her other book that she wrote, Love and Luck, I read last year, and same reaction I had to it. Like, I absolutely hate romance books, but I loved this one. Like, and that speaks volumes. I think she does a really good job of balancing, like, oh, romance, kissy, kissy, hug, 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 with the, like, realities of life. And I think she does such a beautiful job. I absolutely love her writing style. This didn't have a TBR prompt. Oh, I didn't say. Running Dream's TBR prompt was, a prize award-winning book, and Dear Sister didn't have a TBR prompt. That was just a bonus book that I read this month. Sorry, I'm really bad at remembering what the TBR prompts were, but this didn't have a TBR prompt. This was for the owls because it had a heart on the cover, so that's what I read this for, and it just absolutely, I want to reread it already because it was that good to me. So I know her books aren't for everybody. My best friend tried reading Love and Luck last year and didn't enjoy it, but for me they are really, really good. I think probably the only romance books that I will ever really enjoy. The next book that I read is As Old as Time. This is by Liz Braswell, and it's part of the Twisted Tales collection, which is when they write books based off of Disney movies and twist it up so that it is an entirely new book kind of thing. This is about Belle and the Beast, obviously, and Belle's mother is actually the one who cursed the Beast when the country was being overtaken by people who didn't want magic in the world, and they were killing and getting rid of people who had magic. Belle's mom then went and pleaded to the king and queen, who ignored her request, and she ultimately ended up cursing their son, who turned out to be the Beast. And years later, her daughter goes stumbling through the woods to find her father, meets the Beast. You know that part of the story, I am sure. But they discover together that it was her mother that actually cursed him, and because of that, she wants to go find her mother, see if her mother's still alive, and see if they can lift the curse that way, because Belle has accidentally set the curse into fast forward, and it's starting to get serious. This book I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. This is probably one of my favorite of the Twisted Tale books that I've read so far. Sometimes I'm iffy with Liz Braswell's writing. I will especially say one of the frustrating things in this was 2 times in the same book had the line, they let out a breath they didn't know they were holding. 2 times! 2 times in the same stinking book. I can't stand that. I can't handle that life. Like, don't use it at all, but if you have to use it one time, good. One time I can almost forgive you. 2 times I can't. So I'm not a huge fan of her writing in general, but I do love the plots of her books, and I do love the characters of her books. Actually, what saved this book for me was the characters. I thought Belle and Beast, and there was another character, Alaric, in this, were just absolutely beautifully written, and I loved everything about the characterizations. Just not a huge fan of the actual writing style because the cliche, they let out a breath they didn't know they were holding. So and that was also not for a prompt, it was for the owls for a shape-shifting, I think it was like transfiguration class or something. So the next book that I read was Unwind. This is by Neil Shusterman, and this was a 5 out of 5 star book for me. I have read it before, but this is about 3 kids, Connor, Lev, and Risa. Risa is a foster kid who has reached her potential. Connor is a troubled kid who is causing a lot of problems at home and at school, and Lev is what is called a tithe, which is a child who is raised by religious people who believe that you give up 10% of everything you have, and he is the 10th of 10 children. So basically this takes place in a dystopian future, and all these kids, due to their circumstances, are being sent to be unwound, which is basically when the kids are put under a type of medication so that they can have every single body part of them organ donated to somebody else, and they still kind of live on in that body part. So like if you receive somebody's arm, that arm could do like card tricks or something that you wouldn't used to be able to do. Unwinding was kind of the solution to aborting a baby. So instead of aborting a baby, you can then basically abort a teenager. It's a very, very interesting take on abortion and pro-life, pro-choice. Very, very interesting. I have read this before. It's a 5 star for me. I think it's very intense. It's emotional, it makes me anxious, it made me uncomfortable, even so more because I listened to it on audiobook, in a very robotic audiobook I listened to, so it was very like deadpan voice the whole time, and then you're talking about kids being unwound basically to their certain death, but they can feel everything that's happening to them. Very intense, very creepy, gave me shivers up my spine, especially listening to the audiobook, but I loved every second of it, so if you like creepy, it's a good choice. The next book that I read was Grimm's Fairy Tale. I read this for my TBR raffle prompt of Disney Adapted, but I also read it for the Owls for, I believe, a book about witches and wizards or something like that. This is basically just a collection of fairy tales, ones that you have probably heard before, like Red Riding Hood, Snow White, Cinderella, etc., written by the Brothers Grimms. This is obviously a lot more creepy than the Disney versions that we know and love, and it was really interesting for me to read these different versions times. However, there were a lot of ones in here that just were such a snooze fest. There were a lot that I loved, and there, like, even ones that I hadn't heard before, but there were some that I was just like, I just want to be done reading this, and it was so difficult to get through some of them. So for that, I gave it a 2 out of 5 star, but I did really enjoy the ones that I've seen in other, like, adaptations, whether it be storybooks or TV or movies. I really did enjoy that. I just didn't love the entire book, so it was only 2 out of 5 stars for me. We're winding down. We got 2 more left. So the next one that I read was, guys, you can't judge me for this, okay, because there's an explanation, but it was Happy's Big Plan, which is book 2 of the Big Apple Barn collection. This is by Kristen Earhart. I did not have a TBR or Owl's readathon prompt for this, but this I read because of my niece. We are currently, because we are quarantined, reading books together, and this was 91 pages of my life, so therefore I counted it towards the books that I've read this year because it was still 91 pages of my life. I did give this a 2 out of 5 star because, so here's the thing, if she had enjoyed this book and like really got excited for it and like completely understood it and everything, I probably would have given it like a 5 star, like, because I can look at it and be like, oh, from a kid's aspect, that's great. However, she didn't get it. She didn't get the logic behind it. She thought a lot of it didn't really make sense, and she's 6. So this was even a little bit above her age level, and she had a hard time with the suspension of disbelief of it just because it didn't, like, the suspension of disbelief didn't work for this book. So basically this is about a horse named Happy who is adjusting to his new life on a barn, on a farm. He is part of a new riding school, basically, where people go to learn how to ride horseback. He really wants to be the horse for a little girl named Ivy. However, nobody thinks Ivy is ready to ride Happy, so he hatches a plan to get her to ride him. Basically it's just a lot of like, oh, I don't think you're ready. Oh, but I am ready. Oh, I don't think you're ready. Oh, but I am ready. Over and over and over again. And neither my niece or I really enjoyed it. However, I did give it 2 stars because I do think that as a kid who loved horses, because I absolutely loved and still do loved horses when I was a kid and only wanted to ride horseback, I think I would have enjoyed this book. However, it's just not my cup of tea now, and it was not my niece's cup of tea either, so. And then the last book that I read this month was another children/middle grade, and it is The New Cadet School, Book 1 of the Dragon Slayers Academy by Kate McMullen. This very much had some How to Train Your Dragon vibes about it, if you guys enjoy the How to Train Your Dragon series. But this is about Wiglaf, who is kind of the underdog of his family. He's very compassionate, very kind. He doesn't really fit in with his family, who doesn't bathe, doesn't like manners, etc., etc. So Wiglaf finds out that they are accepting people to go be a part of a dragon school, and a a minstrel. A minstrel tells him that he will be a hero, so he decides to go to this dragon school to learn how to become a hero, where he is then sent off to slay the most dangerous dragon of the world. This I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. I thought it did have a lot of How to Train Your Dragon vibes. However, this was written in 1997, so I feel like this came out before How to Train Your Dragon, so maybe How to Train Your Dragon got some ideas from this one. But I did think this was really cute. I really enjoyed reading it, even though it was kind of lame. Like, I mean, it was just kind of like a kid's book, but it was like one of those kids' books that I feel like had I read as a kid, I would have been really engulfed into the world and the energy and everything in it. I did feel kind of weird reading this book, not because it's middle grade or like younger than middle grade. I just felt weird reading it because it was just a little odd. Like, it was just a little bit of an odd book. Things happened. Characters were odd. I don't know. But it just was a little odd. I don't know. It's definitely an oddball book. So if you're somebody who likes a good oddball read, this one's for you. But I gave it 3 out of 5 stars because I think I am oddball enough to like it. Like, I was reading it and I was like, oh my gosh, that's the lamest thing ever. But also I loved how lame it was. Like, there's a lot of dad jokes in here. And I appreciate a dad joke, so... But yeah, those are all the books that I read in the month of April. Obviously, I had a lot of kids' reads, but I also had a lot of, bigger books in there too, so it was nice to break it up. But I am happy with my 15 books. I am really excited with all that I've accomplished this month, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!
Wasn't that a great video? Clearly books make me very happy. Now you can make me happy too. Click the subscribe button to follow my channel. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up if you think I did good. And the notification bell will let you know when I post new content. Also, follow my Instagram for more book shenanigans.